Hi folks, Robert Lowell-Gowler here. Sorry it's a little noisy, but I thought it would be fun to do this week's live stream, not live, as they were milling our road here. 'Tis the season for construction projects, and I've gotten questions as these projects are happening in the spring and the summer. Every year I get a few questions about what the paving of roads, the history of the paving of the roads, and the timeline of it, and some misconceptions about why roads were paved and when that actually happened. So when were roads paved? Essentially a century ago. There was a movement about 100 years ago to pave the roads. More people were driving, there were more motor vehicles on the road, and the old dirt roads were just not working out. There's actually a really several articles in the East Aurora Advertiser over time in the late 1800s where they were actually paying someone here in the village of East Aurora, mostly for Main Street and other main roads, to spray down the dirt roads during the summertime. It had gotten so dusty, and they would hose down the roads, and this was a bigger task than it would be today, probably. It would have taken a lot more time, and they paid, there was actually one contract in 1899 where they paid the gentleman $129, and that's several $1,000s to do it a couple hours a week if it didn't rain and it was getting dusty, and people complained all the time about the dust from the dirt roads. So the asphalt cement the technology had advanced, and more vehicles were on the road. So by the late 1910s, they started paving roads. Now the main roads, Main Street, Hine Street, I've talked about it before, were bricked. Olean Road was brick, but most of the roads remained, and that happened in the early 1910s, mid-1910s. But and up in West Falls, the main road, Davis Road, was bricked, but most others remained dirt. And of course, it led to all the problems with dust and ruts. And you think potholes are bad today? Dirt roads had some major potholes. And if you read back in the old newspaper editorials, and it's not just East Aurora, any little local town would have had this huge problem with potholes in the dirt road. So in the 1910s, residents started to complain. Now imagine you have cars going past, motorists had reason to want roads paved, but also the residents who lived on the roads. They would have dust flying up all the time, the potholes. Just like today, if you live on a road with potholes, it's a pain in the neck to have to listen to the cars go over the potholes and then the dust and everything. So in the late 1910s, residents started to complain, and the village started to respond. And they started holding annual votes, budgeting annually for the paving of roads. And some were with a cement asphalt, not the asphalt you see today, similar, but it actually has progressed technology-wise. I'm not an expert on it, but over time the system has gotten better. But in 1919, for instance, they had a vote, and not everyone felt that it was necessary and worth the expense to pave roads. And a perfect example was in July of 1919. They had a vote in the village. Residents of Fillmore Avenue had petitioned the village to pave their road, and Elm Street was an industrial corridor at that point. Today, of course, it's very busy as well. And so what happened is they had a system where the property owners paid for most of the paving of their own road, because the theory was that it was benefiting them most directly, and their property values were going up. So there was, in many cases, some cases, there was an 80-20, 80% by the property owner, 20 by the village as a whole on the taxes. But that wasn't always the case. But again, not everyone felt in 1919, late 1910s, that paving the roads was worth it. And so in July of 1919, they had a public vote here in East Aurora, in the village, and Elm Street was approved 95-37, but Fillmore Avenue was rejected 58-74. And one of the reasons was is the village, in addition to feeling that they may not be necessary to be paving all the roads or even more residential roads, the village taxpayers, many of them, felt that it was really expensive, and it was. Actually, the cost was about $18,000, but that may not seem much now, but it was a lot of money back then. I tried doing some calculations with inflation, but that's really not a good apples to apples, because the cost of doing construction projects today is different. There are different prevailing wages. There's different costs with doing a construction project. Ask any highway superintendent, they'll tell you. So it's really not accurate to just do the cost of inflation to translate into a modern cost. But long story short, it was a lot of money to pay for just a block or two of paving. And it wasn't just putting asphalt down. They had to put a base down. A lot of these streets might not have already had curbs and sidewalks. A lot did. It was interesting. You see some old pictures. You see some roads, streets that have sidewalks and curbs, but it's still a dirt road. South Grove Street was that way. So there was a debate in the 1910s over whether it was actually necessary to pave roads. You get into the mid-1920s, about 100 years ago, and it started to become seen as more of a necessity. And so 1924, they had a vote again of the village, Oakwood Avenue, Whaley Avenue, and North Grove Street, and all of those were approved. Whaley was just from Main Street to Fillmore Avenue, so essentially a block or two, and it took a lot of time and it took a lot of money, and they did this block by block. So Oakwood Avenue, paving of Oakwood Avenue in 1924 was approved 315 to 85, Whaley 289 to 108, North Grove Street 284 to 112. There was still a big part, it was not even close to unanimous. There was a big chunk of village taxpayers who did not want to pay for it, did not want to borrow money to pay for it, even though a lot of the residents had wanted it. And in the case of Fillmore Avenue in 1919, the residents of Fillmore had petitioned the village, so they wanted it. They wanted their road paved, but the village taxpayers weren't willing to chip in as a whole. So there was that debate. Also in 1924, South Street, actually the county came in and did South Street, Maple Road, and as new streets were put in, 1920s was a big time for housing developments here in our village. There was a company called East Aurora Land and Improvement Company that was a developer around Hamlin Park. So as they put new roads in, they were modern roads. They were not dirt roads. So if you were lucky enough to live on a modern road, in addition to getting a brand new house, you had a brand new street, usually outside of your house, as the houses were built in 1924. So again, South Street, Maple, the new streets on Linden and Griggs Place were just some of those mentioned in 1924 that were new. 1925, Church and South Grove Streets were paved. 1926, Park Place from Oakwood to Main, all approved by the voters. You're getting the idea. Each year they would pick a couple streets and pave them. But many streets in the village remained dirt for decades. There was more and more streets were paved, but it was done similar today as they reconstruct. They mill, they put more asphalt and reconstruct some of these roads. That was the same case. They couldn't afford to do them all at the same time. There were some efforts after World War II, highway funds. There were some in after World War I during the 1920s that also helped, and more roads could be paved. But my parents' generation remember streets in the village of East Aurora here that were not paved 50, 60 years ago. So even though there was an effort in the 1920s, funny enough, it was the mayor at the time was Albert Hubbard II, Bert Hubbard of the White Cross, and one of his campaign promises was to redo the roads, pave the roads. But it was a huge cost, and there was a huge debate over it. Today, it would be unheard of for people to refuse to want to still live on a dirt road. We just take for granted that all the roads are paved. But back then there was a big debate over whether it was even necessary. Some people were saying not everyone had a car, so some people were debating too, why should I pay to pave a road for someone else to drive on? So there was this big civics debate over who should be paying for the roads. Homeowners were actually saying too, like, yes, it raises the property value of our home, but so to have a paved road outside your own house would raise the value of your home, but other people are driving on it. It's not just you driving on it. So there was a huge civics debate at the time over who should pay for it, and certainly that debate today, the village pays for the village streets here, and there's funding that comes from federal funds and state funds for various highway projects. But it's not as big of a debate today as it was back then, because we have a lot more cars on the road, of course, today. But in the 1920s, it was a big debate over whether we should even be paying for it, whether it's even necessary to have paved roads. So I thought today would be a great opportunity, as they're doing some reconstruction projects, milling and repaving of some roads here in the village, to talk about. It's been on the back burner a little bit. Some folks have asked about it. Dirt roads in particular. Just imagine in the village having dirt streets that needed to be closed down in the summer, and the potholes were pretty bad. They'd have to fill in the potholes of the dirt roads with more dirt to try to keep them level, and it was a lost cause in many cases. They were saying that in the newspaper articles. And the cost of having Department of Public Works folks fixing the dirt roads, they did the math, and they were trying to convince residents that it would be cheaper in the long run to pave roads rather than live with the dirt roads. But people were concerned about the expense, and change was difficult for some people, even in the 1920s. So thank you for joining me on this very noisy Sycamore Street for this week's Not So live stream. Again, I am Robert Lowell-Goller. I am the Town and Village Historian, but these videos and my research and my books are not officially connected to my duties as Town and Village Historian. These great ideas come from you, so if you have any ideas for topics to discuss, please either put them in the comments or send me a private message, as you all do so well. I'm getting more and more messages, so I know more and more people are watching. Again, you can watch these videos on YouTube if Facebook doesn't work for you. A lot of times Facebook's been starting to delete videos, but all the videos are on YouTube, and you can search by topic if there's something you're interested in. Thank you for supporting my projects. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. As always, thank you for keeping history alive, and we'll see you next time, hopefully with a quieter live stream. Take care.